Do you feel like you're good at improvising? I feel like I'm good at improvising. When I sat down here to record this video, I had about three topics in my mind, and I wasn't quite sure which one I was going to talk about. And so I hit record, and I ended up deciding not to talk about any of them. When you create content every single day about D&D and TTRPGs, sometimes things tend to run together. But the minute I hit record today, I knew exactly what I wanted to talk about. And this is actually something that I've been thinking and ruminating on in the back of my mind for probably about 4 weeks now. This idea has been in the back of my mind. What is really the point of TTRPGs? Why do we play D&D? Is there really a deeper purpose to it? Is it just a fun thing to do? How do we know when we've been successful? These are all really what I would call deep and important questions to ask about the hobby if you want to get as much out of it as possible. And I don't know about you, but I want to get the most out of things if I'm going to put my time and energy into them. So I think to myself, I want to get the most out of D&D that I can. I want to get the most out of this hobby. If I'm going to be investing time into this hobby, I want it to be the very best it can be. But in order for that to happen, I need to understand the purpose of it. I need to understand like what I'm doing here. I need to understand why I showed up here in the first place to play the game. And so to answer this question, I want to pose you a question. I would like you to answer this question. Why do you play D&D or whatever TTRPG you play? Why? Why do you do it? Why do you spend the time? What makes it worth it to you? Drop me a comment and let me know because I'd be very interested in hearing what you have to say about that. You can also join my Discord. Link is in the description. We have like almost 400 members now, and we talk about this kind of stuff all the time, philosophical TTRPG stuff. So boom, join us in there. But here's what I get out of D&D. Here's the point of it for me. It is truly a creative outlet. So in the past, I've been a musician. I've also been a writer. In fact, for the majority of my life, I've made my living as a writer. I love to create. There's just something about it that I love. Call me a creative, I guess, because it's always been so important to me to create things. I love to create beautiful things. And you know what? Even deeper than that, I get immense joy out of creating artistic, beautiful things and then seeing other people enjoy those things. Like that to me, like there's something about that that is very important to me. And when I was younger, I would almost say that I ran the risk of being a people pleaser in the sense that I chased that so much that it was almost like I want people to like me. Like that was like the toxic version of what I've realized I'm chasing today. What I've realized is that I want to create meaningful art that makes a difference. I want to create art that actually makes a difference to other humans. And then when they look at it and they say, oh, this is beautiful, or they say, wow, this like really made me think differently, or they say, wow, this really made my day better. That's how I get rewarded for my art. That's actually how I get rewarded. And the same is true when I play D&D. Now, I do have a different experience running games versus playing games, but let me talk about running games because we are GMs here. This channel, GM philosophy, the goal of the channel is to help game masters, to empower game masters to run games that are more fun for themselves and their players. I'm here to serve game masters with this channel. And so I want to talk about this from the game master perspective. When I run a game, I am creating art, pure and simple. I'm doing it with the players and I get paid. I get compensated. I get rewarded emotionally when my players enjoy the game, when they're immersed in the game. This is why it is so bothersome to me to play with disengaged players. I know that there are some game masters out there who don't mind a super chill game where people are only half engaged at certain points. It's almost like running a game is just the method by which the group of friends is hanging out and spending time together. I can't be a dungeon master that way. If we're going to do that, like I can play Magic the Gathering that way. I can totally play Magic the Gathering without needing to win, without needing people to marvel at my deck building. I can just sit around with my friends and hang out and we can play 10 games or one game. It doesn't really matter because playing Magic the Gathering for me is more about hanging out with my friends. This is not the case with D&D. With D&D, I play to create and I play to enjoy that creation with other people. And if that is not present, the game ceases to be worthwhile and useful to me. This is what I have learned about my experience. Do you feel the same way, or am I kind of like a weird person? Drop me a comment and let me know if I'm weird for that. By the way, speaking of being a game master, I have this ebook that I give away. It's called The Ultimate Plot Randomizer. It contains 4 D100 tables that let you random roll plot arcs on the fly, roll the hook table, the complication table, and on the climax table, and even on Wild Wacky table to come up with plot arcs your players would never see coming. Link is in the description. Download this for free when you join my email list. If you love random plot arcs, you're going to love this. Anyway, let's get back to the video. So the point here is really this. If the goal is to make the hobby the best it can be, then understanding why we engage in the hobby is important. And then when we understand those two things, we can move on to the part of the equation where we ask ourselves, is it worth it? In life, I feel like there are many things to discuss this about, whether it be our work, whether it be the relationship we're in, whether it be the house we bought or the location we live in, or the hobbies we engage in, or the ways we spend our money, where we choose to go on vacation, how many vacations we go on. There are so many factors that play into life and what it is for each one of us. And for every single category of life, there are going to be things in there that are going to cost us something, and then they're going to reward us with something. See, everything comes with some kind of cost, right? But everything also comes with some kind of reward. And that reward can be good or bad. And unfortunately, sometimes we make decisions and we put energy into things that don't give us back a net positive in return. For example, I learned in my life at this point, maybe it's been almost 10 years ago, that buying the newest video game console and spending 1 to 3 hours a day playing video games like Call of Duty or Halo, while it was a fun thing and I thought it was worthwhile, when I actually did a cost benefit analysis of what that hobby was costing me versus what I got out of it, I actually came to realize that it was costing me more than I was getting from it, in the sense that it took time away from things I actually cared about and wanted to invest more time into. Things like working out, my business, spending more time with my kids, etc. And as game masters, I think it's important for us to ask ourselves this question about D&D or whatever TTRPG we're playing, because it's a good question to ask in general, but also because D&D does take up a considerable amount of time. If you're going to engage in a hobby for, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours of time, at several certain parts throughout the month, it's worth it to ask yourself these important questions. It's also important for me to make an interesting distinction. A lot of the times, running games does feel worth it to me, but playing in games often does not. Now, I am playing in one game right now. I'm playing in William's game. Shout out to Dungeons and 20s. In fact, I sent out an email this morning about my character's possible impending death because he's in a bad situation. That game is worth it to me to play in because I get to express my creativity in a whole different way than I would be if I were a game master. And because William is a really good GM and because I'm playing with some other really deep role players, it makes it worth the time. But I will be honest, as I move forward in life, it becomes harder and harder for me to justify being a player versus being a game master, because being a game master gives me so many creative rewards, while being a player really limits those things. And it's more about the experiential part of delving into one character, which is not a useless or self-defeating endeavor to any degree. It's just a little more difficult for me to justify based on the time it takes. So I have to find like really the right game, the right game master, and the right group of players to make that experience really pop for me and make it worth the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours of time investment per week or every other week. I'll also say that like playing in one shots, I almost play in one shots for a whole different reason. It's almost just for the experience of playing and to get a refresher on my perspective as a game master. So it's almost different to play in a one shot than to play in a full-fledged campaign. But as a game master, I believe that I need to ask myself every single week, is this game that I'm running currently worth it? And if it's not, Should I do some maintenance to upgrade it, make it worth it, make some changes to it that will help me to get more of what I need out of it? Or is it possible that I should maybe call it quits on that particular game with those particular players in that particular setting or whatever? Because as difficult as this is to say, this is also a really crucial truth. If you are running a game right now that is not returning to you the value that you're putting into it or netting you value beyond what you're investing in it, then you're also, by continuing that game, continuing to spend time in like an activity infrastructure that is keeping you from freeing yourself up to run a different game with different players or a different setting, whatever, maybe even a different system. It's really important for us to self audit and self evaluate to make sure that the things we're doing are paying back to us what we're putting into them to such a degree that it's actually legitimately worth it. We don't just fall into the habit of doing the thing, even though the thing isn't paying us back in the emotional or communal benefits that would really justify doing it to begin with. And were probably part of the reasons you got into it to begin with. For example, I know that I run games because I love to be creative. And I know that a big part of that creativity for me and part of what makes the investment worthwhile is having engaged players who enjoy that creativity with me. So if I don't have engaged players, I know, okay, it would be better for me to write a book than to play D&D. And the reason for that is because I could write a book at any time on my own time. I could completely remove the scheduling, time investment part of it. I could just do it in between other tasks. And then when the book is done, I could publish it and then people could enjoy it. So as you can see, there needs to be a certain element of that game that sort of like returns to me some of those things that I hold valuable, which in this case would be the people enjoying the other creativity enough to stay engaged with it, because that like feeds me back and creates a feedback loop that honestly creates better story than I could probably write in a book, right? So the benefits are way up here. It's possible for me to reap massive benefits, creatively, emotionally, and communally by creating with other people around the gaming table. However, it's also true that there could be a version of that where those benefits are non-existent and I would be better off actually writing a book, even if the potential payout isn't quite as high, right? See, so this cost benefit analysis is really important for us to do about D&D. And I think that one of the reasons it's important is because D&D does demand a certain amount of time. If you think about it, D&D for the average game master is going to probably cost about 4 hours of game time, roughly, give or take. But also don't forget all the prep work that goes into it. So you're spending even more time than the players are when you factor in prep work and everything. Now, this is one of the fun parts of it for me. I love doing session prep. However, it's also true that once again, that is all time that you are allotting to this thing. It's really important to calculate to make sure that that thing is giving you back what you need out of it, right? And I'm at this point now, I've kind of explained this and I've gone around that bush in like three different ways. So I've kind of said the same thing in three different ways. So I've already covered that. So here's the challenge I would like to pose to you today. I would like you to do an honest assessment of your game master hobby right now. I would like you to sit down and ask yourself, why am I playing D&D or whatever game you're playing? Why am I doing it? Number two, what do I get out of it? Like, what am I hoping to gain? What would need to be present in order to make it worthwhile for me? So that's the second question. And then the third question is the game I'm currently running adequately giving me those things that I would need to get to make it worth it? If not, have I maybe fallen into a situation where the game that I'm running has ceased to be as valuable as it was when it started out? Maybe it's time to reboot it or to shift the focus, or maybe it's time to reorganize, or maybe it's time to get a couple new players in there. Maybe it's time to close shop and set up a new one somewhere else. Where you go next is up to you. But here's basically the message that I want to talk about today, that I want to share. And this is going to be the big point, the main point. The main point is this: I want for my time investment in game mastering and running games to be time that is just without any deniability some very valuable time. I want it to be time that is actually really, really good for my life, good for the lives of the people who play my games, and an overall net positive benefit to our friendship and community. If it ceases to be those things, then why delay the inevitable? I think this is a good question. Not to say that some games don't grow a little stale and they got to get revived, but we're not talking about micro problems. We're talking about macro investments and the returns on those investments in terms of creativity, the emotionalness of it, the communal nature of it, and the hanging out with friends and whatnot. So it's also true that every game master probably has slightly different things they're expecting to get out of running a game. And so knowing what those are for you is really important. There is one more important thing I'd like to discuss really quick before I wrap up this video, and it has exactly to do with being a game master. As a game master, you probably love creating amazing adventures. You probably also love random roll tables. I know that I do, and I've created a book that would be perfect for you if you also love these two things. This book is called The Ultimate Adventure Generator, a massive collection of 163 random roll tables on 310 print-friendly pages to assist you in generating amazing TTRPG fantasy adventures. Just take a look at this book. There's a chapter about selecting the adventure theme, defining the main quest or objective, choosing setting or location, identify the main antagonist, determine key NPCs, generate obstacles and challenges, add complications or plot twists. The list goes on and on. Literally a chapter for every element of creating an adventure. And every chapter has a bunch of random roll tables in it. Take a look at chapter 1 just as an example. There's a table for adventure genre, primary theme, tone and mood, secondary theme, cultural inspiration, magical level, technology level, significant supernatural elements, conflict scale, moral alignment theme, and the list goes on and on. And then take a look at this. There's literally a D20 table of plug and play adventure theme ideas. Adventure themes you can literally take and plug into the game and just run with, like as if you had no prep time. And that takes us to chapter 2, where there are just many more tables, including a D100 table of plug and play quest lines. Look at this. You can literally find quests for days and days and days, stick in their little personal plot arcs or as entire campaign ideas to get the creative juices going. There are literally over 20 D100 tables just in this book, and there are 163 random roll tables in all. This ebook is available right now in my personal bookstore for just $5.99. It is literally just $5.99 right now because I want to help give back to the community, and one of my favorite ways to do that is with random roll tables. But even deeper than that, this is how I support my channel. This is how I support my Discord. Right now, this is really how the channel makes its bread and butter money. So if you want to also support my content creation and you love the channel and enjoy it, then I would encourage you to click through, grab your copy of the Ultimate Adventure Generator, and then you can consider me supported. And I am so appreciative of every single person who chooses to purchase my products this way, because this is how the channel continues to grow and thrive and become better over time. So thank you so much for purchasing that. And thank you even just for listening to my spiel, because I really appreciate everyone who even considers supporting the channel, and even watching the video as a form of support. So thank you so much for that. And with that being said, thank you so much for coming back for another episode of GM Philosophy in the Morning. I'm here every single day creating videos about the best game in the world, D&D. I'll be back this afternoon at 1 p.m. for Coffee Break Live. I'm here every single morning, 6 a.m. for GM Philosophy in the Morning, and I'm here every afternoon, Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. for Coffee Break Live, where I go live and we talk about D&D and other related topics over my coffee break. So, hey, show up for that, and thank you so much for coming back. Roll some D100s for me at your next game. I will catch you awesome people on the next one.